Welcome to the Lap Podcast. This is episode 13, Midnight in Sin City.
In this episode, we're previewing the Las Vegas Grand Prix, discussing all the news and excitement since the last time out in Sao Paolo, rounding out with our race weekend predictions, and more.
Welcome back to another episode of the Lap Podcast. I'm Tristan Rines alongside Kevin Walker. We're back after Sao Paolo and we're approaching the Las Vegas Grand Prix, the second annual Las Vegas Grand Prix.
Viva Las Vegas.
Perfect. That was perfect timing. But I wanted to quickly mention a quick semi-life update, maybe some new listeners here, because Kevin got some big boy airtime this week on 105.3 The Fan here in Dallas-Fort Worth. And because of him graciously mentioning this project that he's a part of, we did see some new listeners on our last episode. So I want to kindly, highlight exactly what we're doing here. If you are a new listener, a quick rundown of how this works. Basically, you're not going to see one necessarily every single week. This is a podcast that rotates around every race weekend of the season, so you'll be able to expect a new podcast episode every Thursday before and after every race of the F1 calendar. So, with that being said, if you haven't already, please subscribe, follow, hit the like, drop a comment, all the good stuff, and we appreciate you guys listening and being a part of this Lapped podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for tuning in. For the new listeners, for the old listeners, for the listeners in the future that aren't listening during this week, we appreciate y'all.
Yeah,
more than you think. I'm very blessed and very honored to be able to go on the air like I did for the fan. A long time dream come true. Still got a lot more work to do. Definitely not just a shoe-in for a hosting job yet. So still got a lot of work to do. But just a slight little mention on a big time on the big time airwaves helped out huge. And you know what? Just tell your friends. Tell your F1 friends. Tell people who don't know F1. Hey, listen to these two idiots trying to talk about F1. We appreciate it more than y'all know, and I know we've kind of teased it in the past. Big things are coming. Me and Tristan are always talking about how we can improve this thing and get it better. That's why I say we're gonna have new listeners in the future, because we're gonna be growing this fan base a little bit more than we have it right now, for sure.
Yeah, and definitely get involved as well. If you have any questions or anything you're curious about that maybe me and Kevin can try to answer in future podcasts, definitely comment alongside these. They're on YouTube, Spotify, etc. So just feel free to engage. But I wanted to quickly ask you, how was that experience for you? Kind of a dream, finally coming to fruition for you, man. It's a big deal.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was really cool. I did it twice since Sao Paolo. So pretty much our first time around, it was a shock to me, but I was able to have my dad there for it, for my radio debut, and it was really cool. And then I did it last Friday as well, and I got really good reviews the first time around. Haven't been able to meet yet for the second time around, but really good reviews. I think they really like my progress, and they really like how I sound.
Yeah, it was definitely fun listening to you, the opportunities I got to, and you sound like a natural. I mean, good personal work alongside doing this.
I feel like that's just
it sounded great.
Yeah,
upstairs.
I feel like that's just the best advice, or the best I guess the best advice, maybe not the word I would use, maybe the best compliment that you could get is just look, you sound like a natural, right? You don't sound nervous to be on air, and doing this and doing a lot of other shows in the past and doing different on-air opportunities has helped out with that. But enough about me.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some Formula One.
Yeah, so as we're walking into Las Vegas, the big question is, what is at stake? And that's not a Sauber pun, good for them for accidentally being mentioned at the top of the podcast, but we've got a real constructors fight. Even with Lando Norris effectively out of the running in the Drivers' Championship, still a very close Constructors' Championship fight between McLaren and Ferrari to decide the final 3 races to go. Only 36 points separating these two teams. So while McLaren have basically been the fastest team on the grid since, about Miami-ish, they've also remained incredibly vulnerable for a number of reasons. And one of the most talented driver lineups currently on the grid between Piastri and Lando Norris, there are some caveats with that. I mean, there's a lack of mettle when it comes to Lando Norris, I think is one way to describe that. There are mental errors, and there's an inexperience gaffe at times for Oscar Piastri. And the issues along the pit wall as well have really left McLaren in the crosshairs at this stage of the championship. So their opponents, Ferrari, they got, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, and arguably are just as talented, but are that much more savvy, coming from a much more experienced and a lot more acclimated environment, Ferrari, when it comes to actually doing these championship battles. Even though it's been a little bit of time, they were at least fighting in 2022 against the Red Bull team pretty early. So remembering back to Las Vegas's of 2023, Lando even struggled last year, DNF'd in the first 10 laps of the race, part of a cooler than normal track conditions weekend and a late start in the Nevada desert. So I guess building all of this up, what are your expectations as the McLaren fan walking into Las Vegas, walking into this weekend with all of that pressure?
I think I see this as a glass half full situation where we didn't get to see Lando perform at the top where he could with a great car last year in Las Vegas. And I think this year he's going to be able to do that. Now, look, if he DNFs, that's going to be one thing. But Lando's not really known to be doing that, to be getting into crashes and stuff, I think. And also this Las Vegas course, this isn't going to be the first year anymore. So this is something that McLaren, other racers, other teams are going to be more familiar with this time around. I am optimistic because I don't think we've seen Lando really race this course, and especially not in the car that he has now, which is arguably the best car on the grid.
Yeah, I think McLaren, again, they do have the best car currently. I mean, obviously, the last time out in Brazil, we saw a masterclass in the rain, but the conditions quite literally created that opportunity for Red Bull to take the top step, for Max Verstappen to take the top step. Otherwise, I mean, McLaren obviously had a very good sprint weekend. Overall, Ferrari still just behind them on pure pace, but I see this as a very, very, very close battle, right? I see this, I know we're going to be talking about our predictions much later in the podcast officially, but I'm not ruling Ferrari out in the slightest this weekend, especially after you saw last year's performance from Charles Leclerc, taking that P2, narrowly beating Max Verstappen with, all things said and done, overtaking the Red Bull on the final lap of Sergio Perez, the second to last turn of that race, if not basically the last sector, really. So Charles Leclerc having that experience, having that comfortability, Ferrari having that level of familiarity to go the full distance and understand, A, what worked last year, B, what can work with this car as we walk into this weekend, and C, a driver that's very confident. Lando Norris, you talked about how he obviously doesn't crash quite as much, but there are errors in his past, right? I would say the biggest worry I have for McLaren is that because of the DNF last time out, at this circuit, at this layout, there is a lack of experience there from Lando Norris. There is a 46 lap difference as far as actual race performance between these two, with, again, Lando crashing out in the first 10 laps of the race last year. I think those are all things you have to really play into. I think those are all things you really have to consider. And Carlos Sainz, by all means, is also very, very talented. I think he and Oscar can more or less kind of cancel each other out. So when we're looking at this race, it's the inexperience for me of Lando Norris. It's the inexperience of McLaren overall in the pit wall versus Charles Leclerc, who's a little bit more comfortable and has performed really well here.
And I think that's a perfect time to bring up this quote that Lando talked about. This is more on his friendship with Max, but I think it also kind of speaks to his newness, if you will, in being competitive at the top in F1. He says, and this is quote unquote, "It's my first time being in this situation, and time will tell how that changes. But for now, I still respect Max. I think he respects me, but maybe ask me again at the end of the year." And I know that's directly to deal with Max and Lando's relationship as friends and stuff. But I feel like that's also a good talking point and it's kind of something we've talked about a lot this year is, look, this is a lot of new for Lando. This is a lot of like he's not really used to being competitive at the top of F1. Max has been doing this for a while, as we know. Charles, you could also argue, has been in a really good car fighting for the top at times over the past few years as well. So I understand that it's reasonable to be cautiously optimistic going into Las Vegas, but I also think that there isn't reason why Lando can't stay in the fight.
I mean, yeah, from a pure performance standpoint, I think the car underneath him is going to put him in that position. However, I think let's take even a couple steps outwards, right? Let's look at the overall career scope here. I mean, he was fighting against like George Russell back in the day in F2, if I'm not mistaken, and similar levels of machinery wasn't beating George, right? Lando has had success this year. The car is right. The window is there, but I think overall, maybe it speaks to like a driver instinct or maybe like a driver savviness here. And I'm not just walking into this podcast going, you know who I want to really dog on today is Lando Norris. But I think that when it comes to actually fighting wheel to wheel and when it comes to the actual like bite of I'm going to be a driver who can take it to the front and I'm going to be a driver who's going to legitimately compete for wins. We just haven't really seen that trend from Lando Norris over the course of his career. We've seen that he's obviously incredibly quick, especially over the course of one lap. That's allowed him to be in these kinds of positions in the first place. But when it comes to driving wheel to wheel, when it comes to fighting for actual race wins, if he's not winning by 20 seconds, he's not winning the race, is kind of the trend we've seen.
And I know that's a fair point to make, but I guess call it the McLaren in me, but I don't think we've seen the best from Lando yet.
I think that's fair. But now we're walking into, I mean,
now you're at a point where you gotta hope like McLaren's gonna be able to produce this car next year.
Yeah, I mean, next year is where for you it's going to be to look at this statement, right? Hey, we haven't seen him in this opportunity yet. Well, now the window is wide open going into next season, but the window was open this year and it crumbled.
Well, it's not all crumbled. Max can win the Drivers' Championship in Las Vegas if he finishes in front of Lando. Point blank, period. Or if Lando doesn't score. But Lando can stay in it by outscoring Max by at least 3 points. That is how things sit with that is how things sit as we go into Las Vegas.
I would say barring a DNF, those are that the latter portion of that seems very possible. Like, I don't expect Max Verstappen to be fighting at the front, but...
Do you still assume that this goes down to Abu Dhabi?
The Drivers' Championship?
Yes.
No.
You think this is won this weekend?
I think it's either won this weekend or it's going to be out of reach by Qatar. One or the other. Lando doesn't...
Let us know in the comments. Is it Qatar or is it Qatar?
I mean...
I think it's Qatar, personally.
Well, all I'm trying to get at, though, is I think Max is just... He's hitting his marks. He's doing what he needs to do. Obviously, that win in Brazil, more or less, I mean, we talked about it after the race. I mean, it basically sealed up the championship. I don't think that, barring a Max DNF this weekend, this is Max's title. He's going to have enough distance. Right now, it's just too far back.
62 points.
62 points over the course of 3 race weekends would have to be, I think there's 86 point scoring opportunities left. You would need the perfect storm, and I mean perfect storm, for this to actually occur, where Lando Norris is right back into that title fight. And speaking of Max Verstappen, we've mentioned him a couple of times throughout this first chunk. Can Red Bull and Verstappen play spoiler this weekend? Do we see them fighting at the front? Do we actually see them fighting this weekend for the top step?
I don't see, Red Bull, no. Max, yes. I see them competing from the top. I think there's no reason that, like I said, this track is so new. We don't know really what team does well or not in this track. And
considering how disgusting the car was last year.
Right. I mean, that was just like, that was an anomaly, you could say, I guess. But I don't want to rule them out. I really don't want to rule out any team, because this course could really suit a whole lot of people. This course is different. This Las Vegas street circuit is different than most other tracks.
Last year, I think there was a general lack of enthusiasm going into the Las Vegas Grand Prix from the F1 community, and then we actually saw the race, and it was like the second most exciting race of the entire calendar behind Singapore, in my opinion, being the only race that Red Bull didn't win.
Hopefully they make sure all those drains are locked down real nice.
Oh, yeah. Nice and welded right down to the ground. But Verstappen still leads the championship. We've gone over this and over this. Red Bull are coming off of a huge win in Brazil with the tumultuous conditions. I just don't expect Red Bull to be back at the front this weekend. Like, I don't expect them to land on the podium. They're currently the third fastest car in dry, regular racing conditions, and I think they're kind of fighting around that P3 to P6 range on any given weekend, Checo aside. I think Max just needs to keep landing in the appropriate points to score his title. At this point, I think he's going to, and I don't expect him to be fighting at the front. Neither is Checo Perez again. But barring, again, just some kind of crazy circumstantial DNF, I mean, I don't know that they're going to be winning the race, even on merit, though. That's kind of where I'm walking into this. What about Mercedes?
Mercedes, I could see George playing spoiler. I don't know if Lewis could. I think George is really. I think he has that car kind of working for him right now, but I don't see them really competing at the top. I think this is a Ferrari McLaren weekend. Yeah,
I think I would agree. I don't expect much from Mercedes moving forward, even from this weekend throughout the rest of the season. They've kind of secured P4 in the Constructors' title fight, and they're kind of at this point now where they're a general P4 to P7 finisher, barring, again, something exciting at the front, propelling them to the front. They're done with the upgrades for the season. They're just going to be celebrating Lewis Hamilton for like the next 3 race weekends. I just don't, as the Mercedes fan, I'm not walking into the weekend going, oh my goodness, this is going to be a perfect track layout to suit all of their needs and everything they do well. Mercedes are just kind of not resigned to this point. For them, I think they would love to pick up a podium and pick up some more hardware for the season, but at this point in the year, I just don't see Mercedes as too much of a factor, especially not at the front. They're just still a bit too far behind. They're looking on to next season. But what about the rest of the grid? I mean, last time out,
I was going to talk about while we were talking about Mercedes. I was going to give you a moment to. I'm sure you've seen this. I don't know if you haven't, about Lewis and the possibilities for his fans to be able to put. They're putting 150 names of different fans inside Lewis's car for the last race of the year.
Okay, I did see stuff about this. I don't know what the whole entry process looks like. If there's like hey, you need to write an essay or something. About
tell me how much you love me.
Tell me how much you love Lewis Hamilton. I think it's a really neat idea. I'll put it like that. I think the guy's got millions upon millions of fans. To be honored in the top 150 has got to be extraordinary, regardless of, age or enthusiasm. Going through that process sounds like it'd be pretty interesting. Personally, I have not gone through and really looked on it, but I think it'll be a nice little feature for that final race weekend. There's going to be a lot of sentimentality between Mercedes, the fans, and Lewis Hamilton as he, moves on to Maranello.
So all you got to enter is you can go to Lewis Hamilton's Twitter, which won't be hard to find at all, just Lewis Hamilton. He has a post talking about this event. All you got to do is enter your first name, last name, email address, the country you're from, agree to the terms, submit, and they will be picking winners Thursday, November 14th. Oh, excuse me. I was going to say that makes sense, or that makes no sense. The drawing begins November 14th. It will end Tuesday, November 26th.
Okay, so we have a few more days left as of the time of publishing.
November 14th. That's.
Oh, it's gone now. Yeah.
Sorry, I saw the first bolded letter, and but no, I think it's really cool. I will say that it's really cool to have the opportunity to get your name put inside a car, much less that of Lewis Hamilton's car. I'm excited for how this would look, or how this will look going forward. I think maybe they do some special promo, special pictures. Maybe they bring some fans in. I don't know the extent of what this will end up being, but I feel like this is a really cool way, a really cool send off for Lewis.
I mean, it's a nice celebration. The last triple header with Mercedes. I mean, obviously all the history of success with Mercedes throughout the entire course of his career. He's been a Mercedes junior driver for forever. Part of that McLaren Mercedes relationship as well. It'd be really cool, but I mean, I'm not going out of my way. I guess I thought it was neat, but I think the odds are incredibly small for me. I don't typically win giant contests like that.
Maybe I'll do it for you.
Oh, maybe. But we still have a lot more teams to talk about. I wanted to kind of run down the rest of the grid before we recap what has happened between Sao Paulo and Las Vegas from the news perspective. What are we thinking about the Alpine, Haas, V-Carb fight for P6 that's going to be brewing through these final 3 races?
Well, I mean, now you have to kind of look at Alpine and assume that, well, if they don't maintain points, then they will drop. But I mean, we kind of already talked about this in the past. It's really a big time battle between, I believe it's 4 or 5 and 7. Really, there's a lot of fluctuation there. I
mean, Aston are kind of stuck in that P5 spot,
Yeah.
based on the early season success. But I mean, as far as that P6, though, that's still a huge amount of potential prize money for these teams. There's still a lot on the line within that ranking, that hierarchy.
I think Williams is going to be the team to watch when it comes to the mid ranks, for me personally.
This weekend?
Well, just in general for the last 3 races. But yeah, I mean, this weekend, I mean, would have to include that. I think you need to see some points finished, maybe some double points from Williams and these other teams to climb in the mid ranks.
So overall, like I expect VCarb and Haas to be fighting for the final few points places. I think Alpine are going to kind of return back to normal programming, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like I don't expect them to be scratching more than like a P9 at best. I definitely don't see them punching up to like P6 like Haas or VCarb have at times this year. I mean, they're bringing a really cool pink and black livery. VCarb are bringing this really nice like mermaid sort of like livery. Maybe not mermaid is the right way of putting it. They have like a glittery inspired livery for this weekend. I actually like this one the most out of the 3 that are going to be featured this weekend. But the pink and black livery is going to look cool outside of the points. Williams, I'm glad you mentioned them. I honestly think they are the Haas VCarb spoiler this weekend. Like based on their straight line speed success they've had at Monza and at Baku, I could very well see Williams rocketing into that P7, P10 conversation and make things very interesting for these final 2 races afterwards. Aston Martin.
I want to take a moment just to kind of paint the picture for the listeners. So Alpine, you kind of talked about Aston Martin. They have that spot locked up pretty much in the P5 in the constructors with 86 points. After that, it gets really close. Alpine 49. Haas has 46, RB 44, and Williams has 17. But I think the reason why we're talking about Williams so much is because of their late season success that they've been able to have. But no, you can continue with your point. I just wanted to paint a picture for the points in the constructors battle for our listeners.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, as Kevin described, right? Super, super, super tight. I mean, any given weekend, I understand we're not talking about the front of the field here. We're not talking about super big points hauls. But when it comes down to teams like an Alpine, when it comes down to a VCarb, when it comes down to a Haas, scoring a P10 is still an incredibly successful weekend for these teams. 1 point for these 3 teams are going to make or break millions of dollars in prize money that goes towards team bonuses, that goes towards infrastructural improvements, that goes towards new equipment, that goes towards just overall team morale, right? You're a team that's on the ascent. Haas were not expected to be anywhere close to this. Last year, they finished in last place, and now they're in a position where they can be fighting for P6. That is a massive improvement for the smallest team on the grid. Alpine, they've had a lot of news going around, right? And we're going to talk more extensively about Alpine pretty shortly, but Alpine even being in this position at all, I think for them, it's all just a pleasant surprise. Like for them to not be sitting in 9th to 10th place, fighting with Williams and Sauber for any positional gain at all, to now be fighting alongside VCarb and Haas, even if they're landing at P8 for them, hey, that's still beating the expectations of where we were to start the year.
I mean, they're the only team that has...
Not that they're going to be resigning to P8. They're going to be fighting along. But
they're the only team, Alpine is, that has a podium outside of the top 4.
Yeah.
Because of just an outrageous, crazy, lucky weekend.
Yeah. I mean, I have mixed feelings about it because at the same time, and I talked about this extensively on the last episode, but I feel bad for Haas because they have been laying this groundwork and building this foundation, having such a successful season all year, just for Alpine to triple jump over all of that work because of rain. Like you can only, I mean, at the same time, being in the right position at the right time is how you build success. It's sometimes that luck just rolls your way. When I look at Haas, I just think about this as like, man, that's unfortunate. But I also imagine Haas as an organization are walking into this weekend and the next 2 race weekends afterwards,
probably
going fired up. We're reclaiming what's ours. This to me is quite literally the second biggest storyline for the remainder of the season. I want to mention Aston Martin real quick. Last year, they had a really good result here. A P5 for Lance Stroll. Your boy, Lance Stroll. Fernando Alonso landing in a P9. This team, however, feels not really there. They seem more ready to move on to 2025 and are really a lot more focused on 2026 when Adrian Newey is going to be fully immersed within the team. So I don't expect anything from Aston Martin this weekend.
I think this is just going to be like what can the top 4 do, and then watch how the points lay out for Williams, Haas, and see if Alpine, I guess.
Yeah. And there's also Sauber, by the way. Let's not forget about them. We mentioned them at the top of the podcast by accident.
Can we?
No. They have something to talk about for this weekend. Did you see it? You could have missed it. They're bringing a flashy, cool flame livery this weekend.
Isn't it for the Wicked promo?
Across from Alpine with the pink and green?
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't planned.
Are we sure it wasn't planned?
I mean, I don't think it was planned.
I think it was planned.
But that's the obligatory Sauber mention for this podcast. Moving on to what happened between
I mean, I keep saying it like it's a cool car.
You like it?
Green's like my favorite color, so like it sucks that they suck, but like, you know.
I hate that. I hate their livery.
Cool car, I guess.
I'm not a fan of it.
Well, I don't like their livery. I just like the color. Like, oh, that's a green
I mean, the
car.
color green is nice, but like I'm not a fan of that highlighter green.
No.
Yeah, I'm not getting a kick endorsement after this, but
I think out of the 10 teams, we found the next team to not be our sponsor.
Yeah. But I want to move on to what's happened between Sao Paolo or wherever Checo lands. Yeah. The things that have happened between Brazil and this upcoming weekend. I want to start with Alpine once again, switching to the Mercedes power units and gearboxes starting in 2026. Do you have any initial thoughts on this?
I have some initial thoughts. I have my initial thought is, well, I have the wheel pulled up in front of me of all the teams that are going to be with what engine suppliers starting in 26.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, I mean, I guess I'll just go over this real quick. So Mercedes, obviously. So it'll be Mercedes, McLaren, Alpine, and Williams with a Mercedes engine supplier. It'll be Ford representing the Ford powertrain, which I guess that is to be seen for both Red Bulls. And then it'll be Audi representing Audi. Excuse me. And then it'll be Honda for Aston Martin. And it'll be a Ferrari engine for Haas and Ferrari. Sorry. So with that being said, I think it's interesting how many teams are sticking with the Mercedes engine unit, especially Alpine jumping on board. I think they see kind of what Williams and they're seeing what Mercedes is going to be able to do in the future and what McLaren's doing now. I think Mercedes is the way to go. It's just Audi's obviously going to be sticking with themselves. Jeez, sorry. And then some hiccups. And then, Honda going back to Aston Martin, I guess that's like a last chance hope for Fernando to stick around. I don't really expect that to do anything crazy, but we'll see what happens. And I think the biggest question mark when you're looking at this 26 engine supplier wheel is what is Ford going to look like? Like, is Red Bull going to take steps back? Is that going to result in Max moving on, or is Ford going to get in there and they're going to start, just rolling, and the Red Bulls are going to be back in the fight?
I mean, speaking about the Alpine relationship, let's just start there. I think it's a win-win for Alpine and Mercedes. I mean, Alpine were struggling with their own power units. Renault, their parent company, were deciding they were going to leave F1 as a power unit supplier. So Alpine naturally needing somebody to build those power units and supply them with power units. With Aston Martin going to Honda for Mercedes is kind of just a plug-in to fill in that extra little bit of revenue. Overall, Mercedes, you mentioned as being the way to go. McLaren having a lot of success with the same power unit Mercedes are using. And Mercedes have a long history of being power unit engine suppliers within the sport of Formula One, going way back, right? Mercedes, going into this next regulation set, feel very confident about what they're bringing to the table. So for all intents and purposes, you could make a real argument that Alpine are seeing a net improvement as we walk into 2026. You could say that they're going to have a lot more performance gains in 2026 as well. So for Alpine in general, this is a net positive. And I see this being a true gain for them. From a performance perspective, Alpine had a history with those Renault power units of not being super on top of things. You ask about what do we think Ford is really going to bring into this equation, though? That's going to be the biggest mystery. Audi are walking into 2026 as, look, it's a blank slate. It's clean. The expectations are low. I don't expect anybody to be incredibly wowed by Audi. They're probably going to be around where they are currently. And if for some reason they do walk into 2026 and blow the doors off of people, that's going to be, the news story of the entire season. Ford being a part of the Red Bull powertrains, that's going to be a very interesting relationship.
I agree.
Like Red Bull going from Honda, the only reason that Red Bull even left Honda or that partnership, dissolved was because Honda has had this relationship of being will they, won't they in recent years of even being in F1. So they decided, hey, we were going to pull out. Red Bull obviously having to go somewhere else, and then maybe Lance Stroll giving Honda a call and saying, look, we saw the success you guys had last regulation set. We want some of that. We're bringing Adrian Newey in. We want to become world champions. You can't fault Lawrence Stroll, for trying to build a world champion here. So
it's what he's trying to do.
Yeah. Overall, though, I think Alpine are a big winner here. I like that. I like that they're going to be partnering with Mercedes. Again, net positive. This looks like it's going to work out well for everybody involved. Ferrari and Haas continuing that relationship. It looks like Toyota are going to be bringing some, factory and simulator and just more infrastructure behind that team. In 2026, they're going to be off to an amazing start. I expect nothing but success there. Moving on to F1 75, the live event announced. As we're entering the 2025 season, we're looking a little bit forward to next year. F1's 75th season. There's going to be a big event on Tuesday, February 18th at the O2 Arena in London. It's going to feature all 10 teams, all 20 drivers, and it's going to be an unveiling for us to see the new liveries, basically, for all the cars. F1 President CEO Stefano Domenicali saying, for the first time, we're going to bring together our fans, all 20 superstars of our sport, and some very special guests to officially kick off our new season and mark our 75th year of racing, with 2025 set to be a classic season following all the drama so far in 2024. This is a fantastic opportunity for fans of all ages to experience up close the incredible entertainment spectacle that is Formula One. I'm excited for it. I think we're going to see a lot of the liveries being dropped at this event, but I wouldn't be surprised if most of the cars are basically just the show car. Ferrari have already kind of said that they're not going to be debuting the official car at this event.
I have a feeling a lot of teams are going to follow that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think we might see a couple, like Haas and maybe Williams will actually bring their real car, but teams are so secretive in nature within this sport. I really don't expect that we're actually going to see the upgraded technology unless they have their own personal debuts similar to what Ferrari are intending to do. Or, hell, we might not even see the full cars as they were intended, probably until testing.
I think that's a good possibility, but something I want to talk about is how pissed off fans are about the tickets for these things.
Oh, really?
Apparently, they sold out super quick, and they're going for 4 to 3 times over the market. And now F1 is saying not to buy third-party tickets because they're not even going to be accepting them at the O2 in London. So there's kind of a lot of controversy going on alongside with these tickets. But from a viewership spectacle thing, I would really like to see this. I want to see how it transpires if this is something they do in the future.
It'll be wee hours of the morning for us American fans, but...
True, as all of this is.
Yeah.
But hey, stay locked and loaded on the Lapped podcast because we make those sacrifices for y'all. But no, I am interested in it, but at the same time, if cars aren't going to be actually showing themselves, if we're just going to be seeing, hey, this was also the car that we raced in 2024, but now we're putting it on the podium in 2025, and
well, no, I like
what do you think the cars are like? Do you think every team is going to do what Mercedes is doing?
From a technical standpoint, I'm not expecting much, but I will say I am excited. I love new liveries.
Right. Who doesn't?
From a visual perspective, I like to see what, how are we going to be styling these things for the rest of the year?
Let's be honest. If you're not going to bring a new livery, just don't show up.
Red Bull and Ferrari would, they're probably feeling annoyed about it because for them, they're not going to change. Red Bull have had the same livery ever since they, took over the sport.
Max is
effectively.
Max already said he hopes he's sick that week, so I'm sure he'll be doing his chess community service again.
I mean, in the words of Max Verstappen last year on a live stream, oh, have you seen the car? Dude, it's going to look the effing same. It's the same car. It looks just the same. I don't expect it to look any different than this year. The sponsors might be in a different couple of places, but we're still going to see that signature look, which, I mean, it's timeless. It's classic. It works. Looks great. Ferrari, it's going to be red with some interesting, maybe some new pinstripes. Maybe. This year they did yellow and white. I'm sure they're going to maybe add some interesting little aspects to it since Lewis Hamilton's coming in, but I'm not expecting the car to be anything other than red. So, I don't know.
Doesn't sound like you just unhyped me for this event.
I mean, I'm saying there's 2 teams for sure we're going to know what the car's going to look like. That's it. Everybody else, I'm very excited to see. Like Haas, I mean, they've generally been white, black, red, but how that actually looks, I'm curious to see what that looks like.
We need more American flag in the Haas.
I think I'd agree with you. Got to represent. I'm excited to see what McLaren do with that papaya.
Please just do chrome. Please
just chrome it out.
Just chrome the whole damn car.
I love that the classic like Vodafone, like early 2000s look. It's timeless. It's perfect. But they're never going to re-embrace it the way that they'll just keep teasing us with like throwback liveries. The same way they've done with like the Senna one, or the same way they've done with the chrome livery.
Which is fine, I guess, but
you don't sound like it's very fine.
I want chrome. The chrome looks so cool.
I like the chrome a lot. Williams is going to be blue, but like, what does it look like? You know what I mean? They've been experimental with what they've done. Mercedes obviously are pretty experimental over time. They've done full silver, full black and gold, or not gold, black and silver and blue. So, or green as Toto calls it. I don't think it's green. I think it's blue. But anyway, we got some stuff to look forward to. That'll be on February 18th. There's going to be live streams as well, so we'll be able to tune into that in real time and get the full display.
Don't buy third-party tickets.
This will also be an opportunity, mind you, for us to like really get to know some of these drivers. For the more casual fan, you're going to get to meet guys like Ollie Behrman and Jack Doohan and Kimi Antonelli, and like I'm sure there's going to be some press stuff involved.
Like there's a lot of opportunity for this to be a big-time event, but also message to F1: don't tease us with F175 and then not give us F176. Does that make sense? Or am I the only one that feels that way?
So wait. So you want this to be like the move going forward? It's like the full unveil every year, like with everybody?
I would like that.
I think I kind of agree there.
But I don't want to jump to conclusions, because if F175 sucks, then I'm not going to feel that way.
Well, true.
But if they do it right, there's a lot of opportunity for them to do it right and do it well.
I'll put it to you like this. As somebody who enjoys the livery reveal, I like that they're doing it all at once, because I'm impatient. Because traditionally they'll drop them separately. I also don't want to just like wake up at like 9 a.m. our time and then be like, oh, that's a new livery. Like, yeah, I'm sure there'll be some kind of media behind it. There's going to be a little bit of hype involved. But I'm talking about just from like the livery perspective. And I know this is just breaking down. Oh, what does the car look like? What color is it going to be? But I like that kind of stuff. Last year, it was a lot of fun to wait and see like what each team did, but they all had their own schedules and when they were going to like drop things. It was over the course of an entire month. Now we're going to get to see these cars all together at the same time, get to share in the excitement of, oh, hey, this looks really cool, or here, this is one of the new drivers. Let's experience and talk about these things. What are you excited for? Probably going to get a lot of those questions, but I think I'm going to keep myself optimistic for this event. I'm hoping that F1 as an organization don't botch it. Creeping up on time, rumor mill. I did have one thing I wanted to mention in the rumor mill. Zhou Guanyu to Ferrari was speculated a lot over the last, I think, like week, and as their reserve driver for 2025. That rumor apparently has been squashed by Ferrari in a report by GP Blog. The team said they were not interested in their former Ferrari Academy driver for that role. So speculation, it seems to be pointing a little bit more towards Charles Leclerc's brother Arthur. But as far as like reserve driver roles are concerned, I'm not expecting too much. So far, we still haven't even gotten a confirmation that Valtteri Bottas is going to be going back to Mercedes. Heavily speculated. So far, hasn't been made official. They've seen because Mick Schumacher is going to be joining the Alpine Endurance Championship soon. Besides that, though, not a whole lot more rumor mill that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I haven't seen. I didn't even see that part of the rumor mill. So yeah, I did. I mean, if you want a Logan Sargent update, I do know he's driving IndyCar.
Yeah,
I did see, and I don't know the real possibility of this, and I would venture to do a little bit more research, but apparently Max is going to try to drive an Indy car this weekend in Las Vegas.
I saw that he had a test, I think it was a hypercar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A hypercar and an Indy car. So, I mean, I don't think that's anything other than just like Max driving stuff, but...
Do you think this is going to be the proxy... what's that guy's name from NASCAR that was like, oh, I'd be better than Max Verstappen? Like they throw
Kyle Larson.
Kyle Larson, they're going to throw him in.
My favorite NASCAR
like after
driver,
the fact.
actually.
They're going to throw him in after the fact and then go, oh, like who actually was faster?
We'll never know.
I mean, we might. All they got to do is just get Kyle Larson to hop in that car, do a test run.
Do it, Kyle. But let's go ahead and move on to our predictions. We wanted to try to keep this one as short as possible after giving y'all like a 15-minute one last time around. So I'm going to start with, well, you know what? You had a new name for the driver of the day. So drive of the day, hit me.
Great performer of the weekend. GP of the weekend.
GP of the weekend.
It's already Grand Prix, but our GP of the weekend. Great performer. I know it's very blunt and like simple, but like we've been struggling on this one for like a month. And if you have any ideas, you know what?
GPOTW.
GPW.
I guess you don't have to do of the, right? Of the is
yeah, just
exempt.
GPW.
GPW. Driver. Great performance weekend.
Great performer of the weekend.
You can tell we did all this before.
Yeah, you told me to save it. This
I
is
thought
not.
it was
All
gonna
right,
be a
look,
little bit better.
Look,
I
I'll
ain't
put
gonna
it to you
lie.
like this: if you've listened this far into the podcast, firstly, thank you. But secondly,
We're
if
sorry.
you can think of something better, because we don't want to do driver of the day.
Or
F1's
drive
already
of the day.
or drive of the day. F1's kind of gotten that one bookmarked for themselves. Something unique, not just somebody else who's had a really good weekend. That's not your typical like, oh, Daniel Ricciardo won it because it was his last race, or Nicholas Latifi won it because of the memes. Like, no, we like legitimately who's had a great performance of the weekend. So if you could think of something that fits that criteria, please drop it in the comments. We're very much so open to new ideas here. But my great performer of the weekend, my GPW at present, Alex Albon.
Okay. I like that.
I like Alex Albon. I think he finishes a P7 this weekend.
I like that. Give me... I wrote a name down, but I'm going to change my mind because I'm allowed to do that. I'm going to go with Oscar Piastri.
What constitutes a great performance for this weekend for a guy who's going to be driving effectively the fastest car? Do you think he just wins? And this, we can move this right into your top 5 if that's the case.
No.
So he becomes he's the driver of the weekend, but he doesn't win?
No. How do we... Okay. All right, now I look stupid. All right, how do you personally constitute great performance of the weekend?
If you're driving the Sauber and you put it in the points, that's a hell of a weekend.
Okay.
But you're probably not going to win driver of the day. You see what I mean? It doesn't have to be the same thing. Like who's not getting credit? Who's not getting enough credit this weekend?
I'm going to piggyback on yours then because I actually do like Alex Albon, and he raced really well in Sao Paolo before crashing, of course. I'm going to piggyback yours for Alex Albon. Great performance of the weekend.
Yeah, great performer of the weekend. Sure.
Performer.
Yeah, so like good qualifying, has a great race. Like, yeah, things that kind of roll into like, hey, he had a really good weekend. We didn't get a lot of love, but like I wanted to highlight this guy. I think Alex Albon's in store. The Williams are really fast, and this kind of track seems to have historically suited that straight line speed aspect. So I think Alex Albon, I think he has a really good weekend. If Franco Colapinto beats him, however, I think that squashes it. I think we start having more questions about Alex Albon more than Franco.
Now, who has the worst performance of the weekend?
Are we talking about just our DNF?
Yeah.
I got Yuki Tsunoda for a DNF this weekend.
I thought about Yuki. I'm pulling old rabbit out of the hat. I'm gonna go with my good old
Logan Sargent.
I'm gonna go with my good old buddy Lance Stroll.
You think Lance is gonna bin it?
I think he's just gonna like somehow find a way to just
crash. He's gonna forget his brakes exist on that long straight down Las Vegas
Wait, I
Boulevard.
have to turn?
Oh wait, yeah. Where's the turn? I missed it. What about
Maybe
our top?
he catches another pothole or something. I don't know.
What about our top 5?
I'm gonna start with 5. I'm gonna go Max.
I agree. I got Max as well as my P5.
We'll do this as snake order then.
Okay. P4. Lando Norris. I think Lando does not have the weekend he needs, if that makes sense. Like, he'll probably beat Max because the car's faster.
So then you're thinking this is a Ferrari weekend. I'm gonna go Carlos Sainz 4.
Okay. What about your P3?
P3, I'm going Oscar.
I agree. I also have Oscar as my P3.
Okay.
My P2, Carlos Sainz.
Okay. And then that means your P1 is?
I mean, you want to do this in snake order. Your P2 is?
My P2 is Lando. My P1 is... Sounds like we both have the same one here.
Charles Leclerc.
Yeah.
Yep. It's much to your chagrin.
He's just on fire, man. He's on fire. He's got that Ferrari working numbers. So you've got Charles...
I got a Ferrari 1-2, and then I got a McLaren 3-4, and then Max.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I got Charles, Lando, Oscar, Sainz, Max.
Okay. I like that. I don't really have a really good way to end this podcast this time, but I just want to say I appreciate you guys all for listening. We're 45 minutes into this thing, 46 with the intro.
This is what happens when we try to cut it short.
Look, I think we covered a lot of bases this time. Thank you so much for listening all the way towards the end. Once again, please like, follow, subscribe. Definitely feel free to share and comment, all the good stuff. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Lap Podcast. I'm Tristan Rines. That is Kevin Walker. We'll catch you guys next week.